You know, I'm amazed by how it is that the more that is removed from your life, the more you have to think about. You think it'd be the other way around. I've lost my wife, lost my house, lost decades of work. Trying to make sure that I lose my kids. The courts have decided that, thank God. If it were left up to her, I'd never see my kids again. But I had $20 to my name when she kicked me out. And I spent a month trying to get work. And yeah, I have to admit that I was a little picky for somebody who didn't have income. My life has been extremely complex for as long as I can remember. Just, of course, getting more complex as the years roll on. And I wanted something simple. So I needed a job I could get fast. That was simple. I was hoping I would get paid more, which I was wrong. I was wrong about my estimate for my monthly income. Don't know how I did it, but I did do it. Still not much, but it's like $500 a month. And of course, I know there's going to be a whole lot of critics. Oh, you know, you should be making at least this much. You're not even trying, blah, blah, blah. I got a comment on that once. No, I am trying, but I'm not going to screw myself over for work again. So, whatever form that takes. But again, I got a job offer, which I've already talked to the guy about working on the motorcycles, and he seems enthusiastic. So much so that there's apparently discussion, before I've even worked on my first bike at his shop, of me running the shop in his absence. His words were, the guys I have are parts changers. I need a guy with ideas. Which, okay, I can live with that. I have ideas. Sounds like a good fit. The only thing I'm apprehensive about is that the pay is, or at least for working on the bikes, the pay is commission, which means I don't get paid until the work is done. And sometimes that work can run into days. Multiple. Which, I mean, I guess a lot of that depends on how much I end up getting off the work. I mean, if I'm getting $500 a week because I'm doing jobs that take a week to get done, and it's $500 for the job, then heck yeah. But I don't think it's going to quite work that way. We'll see. I plan on going there tomorrow morning to start working. My biggest concern, I won't say apprehension, but concern, is making sure that I can maintain some sort of financial position until I start making money there. And that's going to be real hard because aside from right now only making about $500 a month, I have about $600 a month worth of bills. So one of the temporary orders that's in the petition for divorce in Texas, which is default unless there are court orders that supersede that. One of them is that if either party incurs a loss, a financial loss, due to the separation, until, of course, divorce proceedings have concluded, then the party that was before the separation responsible for that financial obligation will incur penalty. Which I'm not entirely sure what the penalty will be. Probably a fine of some sort or a duty paid to me, which in this case would be the case. I have financial obligations that, while we were together, she was attending to. And the reason why is I was the stay-at-home dad. There's a rumor going around, and I'm sure she probably has something to do with it, that she was working and all I did was sit around all day. Well, I can assure you that is not the case. There is a reason why this guy wants me to work on bikes for him. And it's not because I sat around twiddling my thumbs all day. I didn't make much working on bikes because my patronage was limited. Not to mention that it was coming into the end of riding season, which Texas doesn't really have an end of riding season except for those who just don't want to gear up for whatever weather. A lot of people, we call them fair weather riders. And those are people who really only ride when it's, above a certain temperature or below a certain temperature, depending on the circumstances, and no rain in sight. Which sounds reasonable. That's not me, but it sounds reasonable. My father is one such rider. He'll ride in temperatures below and above his comfort level to a point. But he won't ride in rain, which isn't a bad idea. Riding in rain can present some severe risks. But anyway, back to what I was saying is I didn't have a regular job, but I worked at home. I had a meager online income, which I'm still trying to build up. I know that sounds like a waste of time and all that stuff, but unfortunately the truth of the matter is the internet is where the money is now. I just haven't created enough of an online presence to make any real money. And then of course I was working on motorcycles, and I'd work on the odd car or truck. But mostly I took care of the house. Whatever maintenance I had the resources to do. I was constantly washing dishes, even when nobody was home but me. Cleaning the house as much as I could. I cooked all of the meals. When the kids started school, there really wasn't any breakfast to cook. So that wasn't that big a deal. And after a certain period of time, my wife, her schedule changed to the point where she was coming home at 2 in the afternoon, so I tried to make sure she had lunch. She took her lunch at about 9:30 or 10 at work. Okay, so that was kind of more like a breakfast, maybe brunch time period. So I tried to make sure she had food when she came home as, a midday meal. And of course I cooked dinner. Most of the time. Every once in a while she'd get in a mood, she'd cook dinner. So, no. I did not sit on my butt while she was working. That did not happen. I have an idea of why somebody would believe that. And I believe that she's telling them that. There's a word for it. Splitting. In the mind of certain types of individuals, people are either all good or all bad. the idea that good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things doesn't exist in that mind. Whether that's her or not is irrelevant at this point. So, anyway, I think I've complained enough. And just so you guys understand, I don't actually like complaining. I don't like the fact that the only thing I seem to have to talk about is my failed marriage and everything that this process is putting me through. But this is my life right now, so it's really hard to get away from it. Anyway, yeah, right. So tomorrow evening, I've got another counseling session. Man, if I had the money, I would actually have a counselor tailing me 24/7 as sort of an attaché. Because there are moments when I don't have my counselor that I really need some counseling. And it just doesn't work that way. Anyway, I got a counseling session tomorrow evening. I got work tonight. I got a counseling session tomorrow evening. Tomorrow during the day, I'm going to a place called Henderson. It's actually a little northeast of Henderson. It's about 40 miles, 35, 45 minutes from here, depending on how fast I ride. Speaking of riding, I am getting some work done with what little money I have. I have to replace the brake pads on my bike, so it's got disc brakes on the front and drum brakes on the back. The drum brakes aren't very strong, but they don't really have to be. Unless you're doing an emergency stop, just make sure you're slowing down soon enough. Most people like to stop the last second. It's kind of dumb. Good way to wipe out or get somebody to run you over. Anyway, I think I keep covering the mic up with my hand. Again, I'm not using a selfie stick. Anyway, I did manage to change the oil finally because it was starting to tap. Valves tapping. That's not a comfortable feeling. And I had to change the fork oil. For those of you who don't know what forks are on a motorcycle, they're the parts that attach to the front of the bike that hold the front wheel on. Anyway, they're basically big shock absorbers with springs inside, and they have oil inside that you have to change from time to time. These are supposed to be maintenance free, but man, that oil is like a little bit darker than my shirt. Nasty, bunch of metal dust. I should have changed that oil about 10,000 miles ago. Spider webs. Yeah, I should have changed that oil about 10,000 miles ago. Changed the oil and ride smoothed right up. I used to feel every single bump in the bars. Not so bad now. Still got a wobble whenever I go into the curve sometimes. I think that's a compound situation. We've got these ridiculously tall risers with medium-sized bars. And I know I got to change the tires. The front tire is kind of old. It's about 2 years old, and you don't usually want to keep a tire on a bike that long. And what was the other reason? There was another reason. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, I guess it's irrelevant for me. But yeah, I'm slowly getting my bike back to where it belongs. It's a daunting task when the money you're spending on your primary transportation, it needs to be used to pay for that primary transportation, because I'm still paying on that bike. And oop, this thorn's got a hold of me. Anyway, it is my primary mode of transportation. It's not a very big bike. Gets decent gas mileage, which is fine. But it's just not a big bike. I've put over 42,000 miles on that bike in, I guess, a little over 3 years. 3 years. I got it in August of 20. Yeah, August of 20. Let me go that way. Yeah, it's been a good bike. So I'm slowly getting things together. I don't know what I'll do exactly if I lose that bike, because again, it's my primary mode of transportation. But yeah, sure, I have vehicles I can borrow. I have a truck that's not legal to be on the road right now, but I could technically use it. But 50 miles to a gallon is a whole lot better than 21. And that's what that bike gets, is 50. It's also at times more convenient than a regular car or truck. I'd like to get not a dash cam. I want to get a couple of GoPros and an Insta360 camera. Mount them on my bike all over the place and make some riding videos. Right now that's out of my reach, but I think it'd be fun. Spider web on my nose. But yeah, my life feels very uncomfortable right now. Honestly, there's not one thing in my life right now that is certain. Don't know when the next time I'll see my kids is. Don't know if I'll have a job tomorrow. They may decide to fire me. And if I do have that job tomorrow, will it even be enough? Will I be able to get there? Which right now, I should be fine on fuel. That's my biggest concern right now. It's just, there's nothing certain. I'm sure there are probably a few people out there celebrating that, because unfortunately I do have enemies because of past choices that were rather wrong. There's no other word for it. They were wrong. You know, I do think that if I had been perfect, and I'm talking like Jesus perfect, I'd still be in this situation as far as my marriage. Don't think I would have had quite as many enemies. I don't know, I might have had more. Jesus had a lot of enemies. But he had a lot of enemies because he claimed to be God, which that's something I believe. I believe that Jesus was God. But in this conversation, that's neither here nor there. If you want to do your own research, that's great. Which one was it? John. Gospel of John, chapter 1, says that Jesus is God. Now, the thing that keeps confusing people about that is, well, how can Jesus be the Son of God and God at the same time? Well, how many people are in your family that share your last name? Or a better question, how many people do you know in whatever company you work in share the same title? So, in this physical world, there are corporations where you'll have an executive board. You'll have the president of the executive board, which is usually the CEO, and then you have all the board members. Okay? Those board members represent that company's interest. So, if one of those board members came out and said, I am this company, would they be lying? Well, no, they wouldn't be lying, because they are. But would it suddenly make them a liar if somebody else came and said the same thing? Well, I am this company. And the answer is no, because they are. All the board members are that company. Okay? Unlike a corporation, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we're not voted into power. And the reason why is because the power comes from them. Without them, without the Godhead, as some call it, and some being myself and others, there would be no one on this earth to object to them ruling. So, I have definite opinions on how to regard the authority of God, God being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But, again, look it up for yourself. It's sometimes better to read it for yourself than it is to hear it from another. I know that my past doesn't really encourage a lot of faith in my belief system. And that's something I completely understand. Every man must live according to his own convictions. Unfortunately, my convictions weren't as solid as they once were. Or as they should have been. Even now I have a lot of trouble. Not with the same sins, but with my convictions on my beliefs. And I hate to say it, but I am rather shaken. And I don't like it. That's a personal problem, though. Anyway, discover whatever you need to discover. I've done my job. I don't even remember how I got on that tangent. Sure, somehow it was important. Nothing is certain. See, this is what I don't like about my memory. Anyway, I'm just trying to recover now. Oh yeah, and on the subject of, well, you know, I have a history of terrible and less than godly decisions in my past. Don't forget that Saul, a citizen of the Roman Empire, and more or less what they would consider a lawyer. I think they called them publicans. He killed Christians for a living, including the Apostle Stephen. Stoned him to death. He presided over that stoning. And so, yeah, he killed Christians for a living. And on his way to Damascus one day, and of course this is all in the Middle East, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard this story, especially if you're devout in one of the God-fearing belief systems. On the road to Damascus, Jesus appeared to him. The event threw him to the ground, which I want to say it was his, I don't remember if it was a horse, mule, or donkey. He was riding something, threw him to the ground. But the light from the encounter blinded him. Basically what Jesus says, why do you persecute me? He was asking Saul, why are you killing my people? Why don't you believe that I am the Son of God? So, I don't remember the entire conversation. I seem to remember there was more, but my memory doesn't do quite what it's supposed to. Anyway, 3 days later, he was named Paul, the Apostle Paul. That one will probably ring a few more bells than Saul. The Apostle Paul. So, on his way to kill more Christians, he meets Jesus on the road. 3 days later, he's making Christians. Not in the carnal sense, of course. I seem to remember I stated this one before. Anyway. If you're having trouble believing that somebody might be changed when they say that they are, just look at their fruits. Watch their behaviors. See what they do. That was an issue that my wife and I had before the end. She told me that she didn't believe that I had changed. That I had exhibited consistent restraint. Consistent sexual restraint throughout the last 2 years of our relationship. Unfortunately, it's hard for most people, and harder for some, to reconcile a change of behavior with past behavior. And the thing is, you don't. If somebody exhibits changed behavior, that is a changed person. Those past behaviors cannot be reconciled with the new behavior because it's a different person. Just like Saul of Tarsus becoming the Apostle Paul. You cannot reconcile Saul killing Christians for a living with Paul dedicating his life to making new disciples for Christ. Because they are two different people. Jesus said, "Behold, old things have passed away, and I've made all things new." He was talking about creating a new person within the body of the old person. Taking that person's spirit, removing the sinful, not sinful nature, because unfortunately that nature is always there. That's why Paul said, I die to myself daily. But he takes those old sins, the old condemnation, he removes them. And in the place, he puts a desire to love and to serve. If someone is showing a capacity to change, you should not discourage them by reminding them of that old person that no longer exists. Because it's like punishing a newborn baby because his father was abusive. The sad thing is, that sort of thing happens. Out of resentment for the father, a woman will often abuse the child. And it's not exclusive that way. It goes the other way too. Resentment in the father resenting the mother, will often cause the father to abuse the child. And humans are that way, unfortunately. It's not a good thing. That's why there's so much talk on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook of generational curses, generational abuse. It's unfortunately common for people to look at relationships between two people and hold the new one to the sins of the old one. I'm not the same person I was even 2 years ago. Sorry about you looking at the sky. That was unintentional. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I'm not even the same person now that I was 2 months ago. I still find myself with the extreme urge to tell my soon-to-be ex-wife exactly how I feel toward her. And sometimes I'll post or share something vaguely referencing, but I spend a lot of effort, put a lot of effort into refraining, remembering myself, remembering you cannot be a new person doing the old things. That's actually part of the reason why I don't want any kind of romantic relationship after the divorce, after all that. Because I don't want to be that same old person. I don't want to chase after love, affection. I also don't want to need sex. And unfortunately, that was part of the problem. Most men will understand this because this is them. Some men might not, because either they're emotionally shallow or they're simps. But you know, on your vehicle, you have a gas gauge. It tells you how much fuel you have in your tank. Okay? Well, for men, sex is threefold. One, it's a form of release. Two, it is a way to more deeply emotionally connect with the one that we love, the romantically love. But another is like a meter, a gauge that shows us the status of our relationship. That's one of the reasons why when the woman rejects a man, the man gets so upset, or inversely dejected, because that gauge just plummeted from the green to the red at the bottom, telling him this relationship is not okay, because if it were, then I would want you. From the woman's side, that might seem very erroneous, but a woman has something very similar. Their relationship meter. And that is pretty much the opposite. Can I reject him and he still love me? Because if he gets angry when I reject him, that tells me the relationship is not okay. I really think it's this misunderstanding that actually leads to a lot of resentment in relationships. I can't speak for my wife. I can't say that that was why she did that, because I have other theories, and I'd rather not express too many of them here on a public platform. But for a man, the status of the relationship is expressed in how willing his wife is to have sex with him. While with a woman, it's expressed in how loving he is when she says no. And so they both end up hurt, because she, without knowing it, tells him this relationship is not in a good place. And his reaction to that news tells her this relationship is not in a good place. The funny thing is the situation actually created the situation. Her testing and him testing created the situation that the results of that test indicates. Kind of like, and I'm going to complain again, kind of like divorcing a man because you think he's the problem, and then being upset because the problems you thought he created are still there, even though you've tried to eliminate them. All right, complaining over, at least for now. So I really think that the missing thing in these relationships is a desire to compromise. Women shouldn't really be measuring the status of their relationship by how okay he is with being rejected for sex. And men really shouldn't be measuring the status of the relationship by how willing she is to have sex. Now, I know there's a lot about, the autonomy of a woman and all that stuff, but contrary to popular opinion, whenever two people are married, they're not two individuals anymore. They are two aspects or two members of a single whole. That's actually why God never wanted divorce to exist in the first place. The only reason he allows it is because he loved Moses so much that he respected his word, because Moses was actually the one that created that. It's whenever one or both of the people in a relationship try to act as sole individuals that the relationship is really in trouble. Because the one or ones that are acting as those sole individuals are acting without consideration of the other. And I don't care if you're boyfriend and girlfriend or married. You cannot act without the consideration of the other person. I did it. She's done it. It's not good. If you are in a relationship together, your first priority should be the other person, regardless of what popular opinion says. But at the same time, you're supposed to be their first priority. So, too late, I came to the conclusion that yes, we needed couples counseling. My apprehension on the whole thing was this belief that I'm honestly still having trouble shaking because of certain events in my life, that couples counselors favor women. Because it's this idea that doesn't matter how the man feels as long as the woman is happy. And I can tell you, that is completely wrong. I cannot tell you how miserable I became over the years trying to make her happy. And it could be that she just wasn't giving as much as she was getting. Maybe I should rephrase it. Not giving as much as I was giving. I know that still sounds very preferential because I'm talking about me giving more than her. But if you give more than you get in a relationship, it can be painfully discouraging. Perhaps I wasn't forgiving enough. I suppose now at this point it doesn't really matter. If by some miracle of God I end up in another romantic relationship where even if I don't get married, where perhaps I will learn from my mistakes and not do those same stupid things again. But I will tell you this, I'll put up with a whole lot less if I get to the point where I see that I am putting in a disproportionate amount of effort. I should walk away. And I'm creating new boundaries, new standards and expectations, rules for myself to govern me, not others. I've held this belief, and I still do believe this, but I've held this belief in our relationship that she was my responsibility and I was hers. And again, I still believe that because that is scriptural. Believe it or not, there's even a point in scripture that says that a wife should not withhold her wifely duties from her husband, and that's talking about sex, to avoid the occasion of sin, to avoid the temptation, is what it was. Basically, that's saying don't withhold sex for your husband because that could create a temptation to be unfaithful. No, that doesn't excuse unfaithfulness. Sorry, I ended up with something in my boot. Kind of felt like a nail. Weird. Anyway, it doesn't excuse unfaithfulness because it is up to each person to exercise discipline so that whenever temptation does come, you can avoid sinning. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. But yes, you are each other's responsibility. But, new rules. I'm not going to date just because somebody asks me to. So to tell you how our relationship started, going way back in the past here, 17 years, she was with another guy. I'm not going to tell you his name. They were having relationship problems, and I actually tried to help them resolve those problems. And it was very similar to what happened with me. She wouldn't show him affection. He felt completely alone. And she talked about bad things he was doing. Called him lazy. Basically all the things that are being said about me, she said about him. And I was trying to help them both work through it, and the presiding theme was consideration. Each one thinking of what the other one needs. They eventually broke up. She told me that he broke up over text on Valentine's Day, saying, if it doesn't work out, then I'll just come back to you. I asked her if I could see the text. She told me she deleted it. Well, 3 days after February 14th, Valentine's Day, we went and saw a movie as friends. Came back. Before I got out of her car, she leaned over and kissed me. That was the start of our relationship. That won't ever happen again. So we start as friends. Just friends. And, sorry, I gotta check the time. I gotta go to work. I gotta be there at 4:30, and it's almost 4 now. It's time for me to get off of here, but I gotta finish this. You know what? This has been a long video. Maybe later tonight after I get off from work, I'll go ahead and record a video stating my rules of engagement for romantic relationships. Until then, guys, take what I've learned the hard way. Teach yourselves to just be better.